Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
This is Maren.
This is Emily.
And this is Stephenie.
And
And we
are
are
Remember
Twilight.
Twilight.
This is a very special episode of Remember Twilight. Probably the most special there ever will be. We have no idea how we found ourselves sitting down with the Stephenie Meyer here on the pod, but we are so glad that you're here and willing to answer our questions. We cannot wait to hear what you'll have to say.
Yes, so as you guys all know, we go way back to May of this year when we got taken by surprise and were able to talk to you on letters too, before Midnight Sun actually came out. But we were not prepared to ask you our most important questions that day, but we've written them down this time.
So thank you so much for reaching out to us again. We feel so honored that we get to spend this time with you, especially now that we have been able to devour Midnight Sun. Is there anything you'd like to tell our babies before we get started?
I don't know. I mean, I guess when we did letters to, it just, I don't know, it was so short. And I had lots of, I was having a lot of fun talking to you, and they're like, okay, we're good, we're done. It's like, well, let's keep talking. So I'm glad that you guys have a format that made this possible.
Me too. Because we definitely felt like we weren't done either, as you will see.
Yes, we have quite the list. So we're just going to hop into questions and
see cool.
Where it goes.
All right, so Stephenie, you have spoken on the mental and emotional experience of writing from Edward's perspective, which I can imagine was just draining, maybe. But I would like to know more about the actual process. What was the most difficult thing about writing Midnight Sun in a technical aspect, and what did the process look like?
Well, because it was a process that stretched over so many years, there were a lot of different facets to what the technical process looked like. In the very beginning, it was fairly easy. When I started running into more orchestrated portions of the story where I had no freedom, that's when it really started to slow me down, because I'd be describing this, and then he has to say this line. And you have to stop and say, okay, how do I get him to the mental place where he's going to say this line? Because when I was writing Twilight, I always knew where he was coming from in a macro sense. But like the micro thought processes that get him there are trickier. And I'll give you an example, although it kind of, I don't know, I don't want to ruin anything. I mean, not ruin it that way, but like it sounds right now like this is how it always intended to be. But this was actually, I hit a big bump when I was writing the scene after the meadow where they're in her room and she runs upstairs and runs right past him where he's laying on the bed. So I get to that point and I'm writing, and then I'm like, why would he lay across the bed? That's so sexual. Edward, what are you thinking? Like, it felt really wrong. I'm like, this is not who I'm writing. He would go sit in the chair, and I walked away in disgust, like, never mind, I'll never finish it. This is over. And then, it's one of those things that sits in your head. So after a couple of showers of it kind of bothering me, and then all of a sudden I realized, oh, okay, it's because he doesn't want to be hiding anymore. All right, that's a totally non-sexual reason for him to behave this way, and I'm here for it. And then it sounded, then I wrote it, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is how it was always supposed to be. This makes perfect sense. Why didn't I know that? There were a lot of moments like that where there'd be a line, there'd be an action, and I would just be like, I have no excuse for this. And I would walk away for hours or days or even months sometimes before the solution would finally show up in my brain.
Amazing.
That's so cool.
Oh my gosh, perfect.
So Edward refers to Bella as the girl so many times during the first couple chapters, but he calls everybody else by their full names. So
my editor actually gave me a little trouble with that, because she was like, we don't need to have all these specific names for people because they don't matter.
No, I love the names.
Well, and I said to her, the reason why they have specific names is because they don't matter. Because Edward can't get away with being like, and some redhead who I don't know walked by. Like, he knows so specifically everything that's going on, and he knows these people that he doesn't care about at all really, really well. And so I'm like, the full name is the way that he says this person is incidental. The people who have just their first name are people that are figure in his experience. And then the girl who gets no name half the time is like the whole point of his experience. So that's kind of how that worked out. And then she left me alone.
I love that. I would too. That just gave me chills.
Yeah, no.
We even
awesome.
have a listener who is doing the girl count for every chapter for our episode. So every chapter we're going to give the girl count. We're excited.
Yeah. So just to continue off of that, had Edward been able to read Bella's thoughts, would it have made it any less difficult for him to be around her those first few interactions that they had? Would it have like helped him to think of her more as a person? Or based on what you just said, I feel like that wouldn't really matter.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been, I mean, it's such a short period of time between when he is intrigued with her because he can't read her thoughts and frustrated by her, and then to the point where it doesn't matter anymore because of how she smells. And that kind of just takes that away. If he could have read her mind, I don't think because he reads everyone's minds, that would make him feel like she's more of a person and less to be killed. None of that would be anything because of the way she smells. That just, there's nothing else that matters in that moment.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. This is, I love this question. Do your vampires have soulmates or anything similar to the wolves imprinting? We know about blood attraction and how, once they make a bond, it's forever. But is there, if other vampires were as strong to resist as Edward, would they too find their perfect partner? Is there something like that equivalent?
I'm gonna have to be careful with this one. So on the first, no, there's not like a soulmate where two people are perfectly created for each other mentally. Physically, there is an element of that, and there's a little bit about that in Breaking Dawn. There's a little bit about that in the guide. When you read about Joam, there are some hints there. But I don't want to get into that because that's something I'll be using later. But so while they don't have a perfect match any more than human beings do. Like, do we have soulmates? I don't know. Do we? Or do we just fall in love and we could fall in love with any number of people? Is that how it is? But with them, it's different because once they fall in love, it's game over. So they have to be kind of careful about how they fall in love.
Right.
I love that. We for the record, we love imprinting. Like, it's a big deal to us, and we make sure that we talk about it very carefully with our listeners so that they learn to love it as much as we do. We think it's beautiful.
Yes. Okay.
Well, I like the idea that imprinting exists in nature, and it's not something that we as human beings do, but other animals do. And I've always been fascinated with that process. So I liked bringing it into my fiction.
We do too.
Okay, so Edward doesn't use his mind reading gifts to like seek out and kill murderers anymore. But does he use it in other ways to do good? Like, this came up for me with Mrs. Cope, who is like a person in power in the place of a school who's having inappropriate thoughts about a minor. So had Miss Cope like had any previous kind of things, would Edward report her? Like, does he use his gift for good still? There are two different aspects he has to deal with. And the most important aspect is his family and their secrecy. That comes before everything else. So he can't go around do-gooding. And he speaks to that at one point in the book, that they kind of have to keep their heads down. They don't, they aren't going to be superheroes because that would draw attention and they have to protect themselves. He's a really good person though. So he wouldn't, I don't know, he might anonymously do something if she was acting out on things or targeting someone specific. He might, I don't know, make a call. Although, does that work? I mean, people do stuff like that all the time and no one does anything. And he knows better than others how little that would do. Maybe he'd have to scare her straight or something. I don't know.
Yes.
But Shelley Cope's not up to anything nefarious, so he doesn't have to step in. But generally, no, they can't be involved in superhero-esque type of things.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, he got it out of his system.
I'd like to see him scare someone straight, though. That was really good. And he's such a good person. So you wrote Twilight so perfectly to make us all fall in love with Edward. I was completely caught off guard to fall in love with Bella through Edward's eyes. Were these missing pieces of information aspects of Bella you had always known, or did anything come up while writing Midnight Sun?
I hadn't planned out the specifics, but I did know that she was particularly gentle and kind towards others. That and some of that is her upbringing, some of that's who she is, but who she is also, she's a real humble person. She doesn't think very highly of herself. So she's not going to write her book and talk about, I did this good thing, and then I did this good thing. Like her book is all about this incredible person that she's met that just consumes her consciousness now. So she's not interested in stories about herself, and she cuts out everything that's specific to herself because she's focusing on him. So I knew that when I came into this, one of the fun things was going to be putting back in all the stuff that he's so vitally interested in that she couldn't care less about because she just wants to hear about him. And I hoped that people would fall in love with Bella, because when they read Twilight, they're putting themselves, they're a first person narration. They're putting themselves in her shoes. And Edward's easy to fall in love with. So I felt like that was easy enough. But, I liked that we get to see all the things that make her special through her.
Oh, I know. We always called him our sweet baby angel, which is my favorite murder stole. But I just couldn't believe all the little tiny things about Bella that I was just like, she's so good, and he is just so focused on how good she is, and I love her. she's an angel now to me.
Okay, so this isn't necessarily a question, but we just finished recording the first chapter of Midnight Sun, and we talked about this a lot. So I love how aware Edward is of where people's blood are in their body, which makes sense now that I've read it, but it's never something I would have thought about before. But I just love how it perfectly demonstrates how both Edward and Bella are physically affected by each other. Like from Twilight, he told Bella that her scent is a big problem for him, but she never really quite gets it. And so just to read that even her blushing can affect the temperature of the room enough to make him go a little bit crazy was so cool to hear.
I love that so much too.
Oh, thanks. I felt like that was, I didn't really think about that. That was just part of the vampire experience in the way I imagine vampires would experience the world, and how much all of the physical signs of our circulatory system would be a thing for them.
Okay, so we just finished, before we got Midnight Sun, we made sure that we finished all of Eclipse and all of The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner in 2 months. It was a very intense recording session, but we kind of fell in love with Fred. And then there was this whole thing with Jasper in Midnight Sun. And so we were wondering, do Jasper and Fred's powers work in similar ways?
They do, in that, there's kind of the head talents, the mind things, and then there's the physical things. And the mind things are a lot more common. And most of the vampires who have a gift, it's something mental. And so Jasper is really unusual, and so is Fred, because what they do, both of them, physically affects your body. And then you have Benjamin, who's the most unusual because he physically affects the world around him. And so he's the most unique of all the talents out there.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to bring it up, but this is a big one for me. So I was very brokenhearted to learn that I was correct in assuming that Edward had decided to leave Bella before the end of Twilight.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot when we were doing our Twilight recordings, and I was like, I think he's decided to leave her. Yeah. And I was like, I just can't. He already knows. Yeah. And then in Midnight Sun, we were like, he already knew.
Well, especially because he knows exactly what leaving her is going to do to her. That just added an extra layer for me.
I thought it would be unrealistic and also unfair because of Alice, there's a lot of things that just are known quantities. And if he could imagine that she would be fine, like a normal breakup, that she would eat a pint of Ben & Jerry's and watch an empowering female movie and that she would move on, that would be making it too easy on him. Like he
Mhm.
had to know the stakes to make it
Yeah.
really a choice that he's making in a fair way.
Yeah. So it did catch me off guard a little bit at the end of Twilight, where the words that he was saying to her were so different from the words that he was thinking in his mind. And I just wanted to know if this was like an instance in which the dialogue of Twilight hindered the writing of Midnight Sun, or if it feels in line with your character of Edward to have him like intentionally be making sure that she feels like safe and secure and loved in those moments, even though he knows it has like a deadline.
It's a little bit of both, because there were a couple things that bothered me when I was writing, particularly the scene in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Not because he's lying to her to keep her feeling secure, but the times that he doesn't, because I kind of think it would have been a better facade. And there's a couple times where he riles her up where I think he would have already realized that was going to happen. But, you know, I was locked in. And so I tried to make it where he just is emotionally distraught as well. And so he is making mistakes. He's not, he knows he should be doing a better job and he's not. But yeah, that was a little bit difficult. But the fact that, I mean, this is what he does is
Mm-hmm.
once he realizes it's too soon for him, he's not there yet to have her be suffering. And she's already suffering. And so he can't make that worse. And so he's trying, and what other way can he do except just to lie completely through his teeth all the time? You know,
Or
he doesn't have a
Edward.
lot of options.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so heartbreaking.
I know. I have not cried ever reading a book as much as I did with the lemonade cap when he crushes it. I became not a person for like half an hour. That was very
we were
intense.
really stuck on the lemonade cap all through Twilight and New Moon. We just were like, we know he's still got it in his pocket.
Not in
Just
the
every
mood.
day.
Nope,
What to
nope.
learn that was very almost too much. All right. Oh, okay. Reading Midnight Sun for me was like coming home to my best friends and family after a very long time away. So thank you for doing that for us. I really want to know, just personally for you, what books or stories have you felt like were home to you? To me, it's Twilight, you know?
Oh, well, that's really nice. I'm glad that I've been able to provide that, because it is a big thing in your life. And as a kid, I mean, Anne of Green Gables is still, and I think the books that you read first, the first ones that affect you are always going to feel like home to you.
Yeah.
Little Women is kind of like that, although I think Anne of Green Gables is the stronger sense of like home. Jane Austen was something, you know, as a kid, I have a lot of brothers and sisters. And so we didn't do a ton. Like going to the library was like a big deal. And I'd get as many books as I was allowed, but still I was mostly stuck with reading what was on my parents' shelves. And luckily they had, you know, Gone with the Wind and Pride and Prejudice and a lot of good ones to read. And so those still, you know, there's a couple of like Zane Grey books that my dad had that are also like that, where it's just such a comfort to be back there. But then there's newer things that I can feel becoming a new home. Laini Taylor does that for me. And this new Martha Wells with the Murderbot, which sounds so not like a home place, but it so is, because aside from being able to kill people really easily, I am Murderbot. So, you know, it's funny, you find a book and you're like, this has a piece of me in it.
Yeah, I love that about Little Women has been in my top 5 since I was about 17 years old. So I love
You
that.
know what's
I'm
funny?
going to write down all those other ones you said.
Is growing up with Little Women, I always saw myself as Jo, except for like the writer part, because that wasn't who I was.
That's so funny.
Was the pretty one, and I was the tomboy who, you know, was I kind of did protect her. She's very, very sweet, and I was rougher, so you know I could get in there. And then when I grew up and started writing, I was like, oh, I totally turned into Jo. I did it,
Jo. I've told Emily to read
so
Little
cute.
Women so many times.
I know.
Okay, did you see the new version with Saoirse? Because that was the best one that they've done, and I think she's the best Jo that I've seen. And my husband watched it and said, oh, and he started reading, and I think he's almost done. He's slow, but you know, that got his his interests. So
No, yeah, absolutely. I saw it in the theater opening night and I was just completely changed. I was like, why did no one tell me about this?
I've been telling Emily about Little Women
Yes.
for like 20 years.
Never paid attention. And then I saw it and it was all different for me. Okay. So I want to know how you feel about Renee, because the fact that Edward is so critical of Renee just made me feel so justified in my like dislike for her. And Renee is the character we get the most messages about because people feel like we're very unfair.
Oh my gosh.
About how we talk about her. So
people write us,
you know,
like 10 paragraph emails about how just defending Renee, because we're very much like, we just want her to care for Bella so that Bella doesn't have to care for her. And we just want it, you know, I mean, like, you know, it's just so hard for us to have that kind of a relationship because of our own pasts or whatever. But yeah.
Well, I think people who have seen that firsthand, whether it's their mom or someone else in their life, picked up on it in Twilight a lot more clearly than other people, because it's all there. But Bella is so biased in favor of her mother that she doesn't ever put it into a dark light. You know, that's those words don't work together. But she always sees the best in her mom. But it's all there who Renee is. And it's not like Renee's mean or intends to be cruel. It's all unintentional. And she just, it's how she is. But how she is not a good mom.
Yeah, I feel like I've never been like, oh, Renee's mean. But to me, it's just like a thoughtlessness that really gets under my skin, where I'm like,
there's
you just have to make a choice once you become a mom, you know?
Yeah, you don't get to be that anymore. And Renee wants to be this free spirit. Maybe she can't help it. I don't know. I think once you have kids, you have to help it. You know?
You have to make the choice.
I don't think that anybody ends up like Bella if they have a really good mom.
Stephenie, thank you. Every time we get an email from now on, I'm just going to play that. I'm going to soundbite that and just send that to them.
Justified.
Thank you. All right, so this is me.
Yep.
All right. Oh, I love this question so much. This was one that I handpicked from one of our listeners named Shasta. This is, we'd love to hear your thoughts about how it seems like Edward is the one who does the most personal growth in the series. Bella does grow and adapt to various circumstances, but she always knows exactly what she wants. Edward is the one who has to finally reconcile so much regarding himself, their relationship, and Bella's wants and desires. I love that I tell people all the time, I'm like, Edward's the main character. Edward's the one who grows the most. He's the one who has the growth and the arc and the really strong struggle. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
I mean, Bella's definitely the main character in Twilight.
Yeah, I know.
But it is
I just love Edward so much.
She does know what she wants all along, and I identify with that mindset. I'm not very like Bella in a lot of ways, but I've always been pretty sure about this is what I'll do, this is what I won't do, this is who I am, this is who I'm not, and I like that she just is unshakable. Like, I want this, I'm going after it. Because there are people who think that Bella's not like a great example, and I for a young girl, and I think there are elements, yes, you should not get that caught up in a boy. If it's a fantasy creature that doesn't really exist, go right ahead.
Yes, we say that all the time.
If it's a normal human boy, yeah, take a step back, absolutely.
We do, we talk about that all the time. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, because this is a fantasy novel set in a world that isn't real. But at the same time, I do think it's good for girls to be like, I can be sure of what I want and not be afraid of what I want. Edward does have a lot more growth because Edward has so much more self-hatred. Like, Bella may be a humble girl, but she hasn't done anything horrible in her life. She's a pretty good person. So she feels like, I'm not pretty enough or I'm not special enough for Edward, but she doesn't feel like I am evil and cannot have a happy ending. So it's a pretty big thing for him to find, through loving her, a way to love himself. And I feel like it's important, after you read Midnight Sun, to go read Breaking Dawn to kind of see the completion of that arc where he gets to a place where he can love himself again.
I love him in Breaking Dawn as a father and a husband. He is, of course, he's the ideal. The growth that he does and how he makes up his mind to be that person and then never wavers. I love that.
Me too, especially because we always see Bella fighting to be a vampire because she knows that's who she is supposed to be. Edward is constantly fighting to be a husband. And he finally gets that in Breaking Dawn, just like Bella gets to be a vampire. So finally they've both reached this place where they feel like they were supposed to be, and it's so beautiful.
He's such a good husband and dad. I love him.
Well, I think his fight is to be able to love himself and to agree with Bella that they belong together. Even after he has accepted this, that they will be together, he always feels like it's wrong for her. And it's not until she's a vampire that he sees that, oh, no, I totally have my soul. Because look, she obviously has hers. And that is the big change for him, is being able to realize, oh, she's still Bella and I'm still of worth because look at how amazing she is. I enjoyed that part a lot.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So this one kind of leaves things open-ended, but I was wondering if you do have any regrets about anything that was written into the original plot of the series, and anything that, like, having this 15 years perspective has given you new insight into, that going back to Midnight Sun you may have wanted to change.
Nothing in the plot. I have a weird glitch in my brain. Maybe it's all writers have this glitch in your brain. Once something happens, I mean, for me, the story happens because of who the characters are, and they have to do certain things and be a certain way because that's who they are. And so the plot to me is like history. It's like going back and saying, would you change how the 60s went so you could write a different history of them? You know, it's what happened. and sure, there's lots of stuff I would change if I had another editing run, and Life and Death is proof of that, because I had a lot of fun making all the changes I would have made if I'd had another go at Twilight. But the plot doesn't change, just words, conversations, that kind of thing.
Oh gosh, Life and Death destroyed me. I read it for the first time this year, or maybe it was like the end of last year. And I stayed up all night reading it, and then I fell asleep for a little while. I got up really early in the morning, finished reading it, ran downstairs, and I was like, we have to finish. We have to do this recording right now. It destroyed me. It was perfect. I loved it.
Well, it made me fall in love with Edith, and that's a weird thing to be. I'm in love with Edith the vampire.
She's so cool.
She's incredible.
She's amazing.
All right, so these are kind of like Twilight in general.
They questions. Are. Before we do these, though, I was just wondering if there's anything about Midnight Sun that you had expected to be asked at this point that hasn't come up in any of your Q&As.
I love that. That's so good, because I keep hearing the same questions over and over, and I'm like, what else does she want to tell us?
I don't really, because for me, what I'm looking for are questions that I don't know to ask, because when I was writing it, like, I knew everything that was supposed to happen. I had to find words and actions in the moment, but like, I always knew where Edward was. So nothing was a surprise to me. There weren't surprises in writing this because I knew both sides. So I was curious to see if people's questions would give away things that were unexpected to them. And so far, I mean, I think most people hadn't had a chance to read it all the way through or very carefully with some of my questions. And so, so far things are pretty easy to answer. So we'll see if someone stumps me.
Well, once we do the entire recording of the whole book, we'll send you a new list.
Yeah, that could take a little while. I just was listening to Jake Abel, who did the recording. I guess it's 23 hours long. Poor Jake. I still feel, I mean, he was really great about it. But I still feel kind of bad saying, hey, do you want to think about doing this? Because man, can you imagine talking that much? Ow.
Yes.
Kind of now, yes.
We can. That's all we do but also I would have been like, oh yes, and thank you for the beautiful gift to let me do this. Like, I would love to do that. Yeah. Oh good. This is another Brie question. We're very Brie obsessed right now. Was Brie correct in assuming how Diego died? Could you give us any closure about Diego's final hours?
It was more than a few, and it was not good. And Riley does describe it. That's what he's talking about. Because for Riley, Victoria's had a long life of watching James at work. So she's seen some stuff, and she's, not a nice person, very dark. this is the first time Riley's ever seen anything. And for him, there's this whole mental clash because he's in love with Victoria and he thinks that she's beautiful and perfect and that she's doing all this weird stuff to protect them, that's what this is about. And then seeing that side of her, he either has to be like, oh, she's horrible and I've made the wrong decision, or he has to be like, no, this was okay what happened because I love her. And obviously that's the way he went, but that was a real change in him because he liked Diego, genuinely thought of him as a friend.
Yeah.
And he had to be a part of that. And it changed a part of who Riley was. It was not, and you know, they should have run. They should have run.
Oh yeah, they should have. I lost my mind because first he comes back, Riley comes back to the house just completely changed,
Yes.
a totally different vampire than he was before, and I was like, oh no, what happened? And then when Bree finally realized what happened, I had to put the book away for a few hours before I could come back to it. I was very devastated for
That
Bree.
was actually one of the times where you did wish that you could change the plot, because I wrote Bree knowing where it was going to end,
Mhm.
and then fell in love with her and Diego, and I just wanted them to get away. And
Yep.
So Shelley and Steve were the two vampires that
Mhm.
made it out, and they're named after friends of mine, Shelley and Steve. And so I just like to imagine them like Bree and Diego, but that got the chance to live and love and be away from that.
Yeah, when Bree and Diego kept trying to find them, I just kept saying, no, just run, just go, don't go back.
Oh man. Yes. Okay. Our listeners would never ever forgive us.
Sorry, Stephenie.
I know.
Oh, that's all right.
They would never forgive us if we didn't ask about the khaki skirt. It's something we love to talk about. It's brought us a lot of joy. So we were just wondering if it was inspired by a skirt you own, if Bella has some kind of special attachment to it. What does it look like?
Well, I was talking about this because I didn't realize that this was a thing. Like, I didn't know that people cared about having a neutral tone skirt in your closet. I think the use of the word khaki sort of is something that ages me. Like, that was a thing when I was younger. I think most people my age still have a khaki skirt or something equivalent in their closet. And it's just one of those, it's just that like base item, like a black t-shirt. And Bella has such a limited wardrobe. I figured her only dress up thing would she have one skirt, and it would be a neutral tone that she just, would have had in her closet and never worn. I could never pull off like that really nice looking straight skirt that the Gap used to advertise, but I'd like to think Bella could.
Can I show you something?
Yeah,
I shared this with our patrons this week because I was like, I can't keep it to myself anymore. This is something I did and I don't regret it. This is me. These are just a sampling of my engagement photos.
Oh, nice.
Wherein I wore a khaki skirt.
See, there it is, pulling it off.
It's ankle length. From the Gap. It's straight all the way to the floor.
There's a certain group of us that were raised, and Gap used to be the greatest, and they had some really great commercials, and they made you want basic items of clothing.
I was obsessed with the Gap. You and I are close in age. I'm 41, so yeah, I was obsessed. I made sure that was in my wardrobe, and I wore it for some of the most important pictures of my life. So I love it.
Well, you were smarter than me. I basically wore, isn't it called a Canadian tuxedo if you wear a denim shirt with denim pants?
Yes.
That's what I wore in my engagement photos.
Stephenie.
That's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
I wore that to Sadie Hawkins my senior year.
Yeah, it was a thing. We dated ourselves real well.
We really did.
It could have been worse. I lived all through the 80s, and there were some really crazy things I could have been photographed with.
I mean,
bangs when I was very young. That was a thing. I feel a lot of pain over that now.
I am so glad to hear all of this.
Me too.
Oh, is this me?
Yes.
Okay. I know you have been talking about the other Twilight universe stories you'd like to spend time writing. So I was curious into your thoughts on fanfic. We have so many people. They're constantly sending us fanfics of Twilight. I've always been curious what it's like to have characters you have created go live in someone else's story. For the record, I've only read one like Jacob fanfic, ever. I've never read any
yeah.
more.
We don't really read them, but people talk constantly to us about
They're
them.
just, did you read it yet? And I'm always like, no, I'm reading Midnight Sun or whatever.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that topic because on the one hand, I absolutely understand the idea of wanting to live in a story for more than what the author gave me. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, people expend, and I don't read fan fiction,
Yeah.
but I hear stories about it, particularly about like Harry Potter fan fiction, and people write things longer than the Harry Potter universe with their stories. And I find that incredibly frustrating because it's like, obviously you're a writer. Obviously you love characters and you love story building. Go do something you can claim. Go do something that can be yours, that you can put your name on and be like, I wrote this book. I mean, I feel like fan fiction is good practice, right? But then you're using up all your words and someday you might run out and you should use them on your stories. I feel strongly about that, but I also completely understand wanting more.
That's incredible. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I totally agree though. I love how passionate you are about it too.
I like to read books and sometimes I can't find ones I want to read. And if these people were out writing real books, maybe one would be one of my home books.
Oh yeah.
If they don't write their book.
I love that. Thank you.
Yes. This is completely random.
But Emily's been thinking about this a lot. She did math.
I did do math. I want to know if you have an actual number for how fast vampires can run and how fast Edward specifically can run.
I occasionally will assign numbers in my head, but I've never decided on them completely. And there's one of the constants that I'm getting with the questions that I'm getting is a lot of people want me to nail down some specifics. And I don't, with some things I feel comfortable with that, but with other things, there might be a point in time where I'm going to want that to be a different number because I'm writing something and it works better for this. So that's one of those things I'm just going to hold on to and not decide on until I need to.
That makes complete sense.
Love it. You'll just have
I'll
to
keep doing my
math.
calculations.
All right, this is another one from one of our listeners. I think it was Victoria.
This one's from Riley.
Oh, Riley.
Yeah.
Why did the illustrated guide, oh yeah, she's an illustrated guide aficionado. She knows everything in that book. Good. Why does it not include most of the characters' birthdays?
Okay, so that really fits with the last question. I may at some point be writing something and it's November and I want to have a birthday party, or I want to have someone have a really bad day and it's also their birthday. And then if I've given everyone a birthday and they're all in the spring, I can't have that. And so the year is all you get. Some point I may want it. So there's a lot of things that are left in the haze of the possible so that I can have them when I need them.
Smart.
Super smart. So you were right. That one was from Victoria. Okay. This one is from Riley. And she wants to know if there's any hope of the graphic novels ever being completed.
I hope. I can't tell you how much I hate having half of a book out. I mean, and it has been years and years, and there have been just an amazing number of stumbling blocks and problems and issues and people no longer working here and this company no longer owning this. And every year or so I go back and say, hey, how about we look at this again? Try this again? We have to start over and start New Moon from the beginning. I mean, we had a beautiful artist who did a great job, but if that can't be continued, then let's do something. And maybe there's not enough demand. I know I want it, but they look at things on a spreadsheet. And so if they're like, well, you know, it's not worth the effort. I don't know. I've just been waiting, trying to be for a long time.
Maybe now that they've seen how incredibly in demand this is.
Yeah,
maybe seeing that all the Twilight fans are still out there. Maybe that'll mean something. I hope
we're definitely all still out here.
Yeah, I know the same kind of thing is going on right now with the vinyls for the last two soundtracks. Is people want them so badly, but I know there's just such a mess of licensing that goes into it. So it's just it's not just an easy answer of send Stephenie a letter and be like, hi, we would like these, and then she can give them to us.
Yeah, I don't have power over a lot of that stuff. If I did, we'd have the whole saga done already.
Okay, this is one that people ask us all the time, and a lot of people asked, if you ever talk to Stephenie again, can you ask her this? And I was like, this seems like a funny thing to ask them, to ask if I have time to talk to Stephenie Meyer. They want to know what the bet that Emmett and Jasper made, what the wager was.
Okay, that's another one I'm holding on to in case I need it. There are different possibilities, and I couldn't decide on what exactly I'd want them to have to do. So I am waiting on that in case I need it.
I can't wait.
I always imagined it would be like a thing, but now I'm just imagining all the possibilities of what they would make the loser do.
Yeah.
Funny.
That's exciting.
Did you have one more?
No, those are all the questions that we had. Of course, we have a million little things that come up every day, but those were the most important to us. And so I'm so happy.
Really good, thoughtful, interesting questions for me to answer. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Stephenie.
And I'm glad we got a chance to talk again.
Yeah, me too.
I've been doing all these, virtual events where I'm basically looking at my own face and imagining an audience and asking questions, but not seeing people like respond, like when you're in a signing and there's people there and you see people saying, oh, okay, or I don't buy that, there's a response and you're a part of it. And I've just been talking to myself for so long. So having a chance to actually talk to people and see them and have them ask questions directly to me has been fantastic. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. You're welcome. We're so overwhelmed. Yeah. We spent a lot of time the past couple of days just randomly crying and then also being randomly like, we don't know how to do this. So it's been very
you did it great.
Awesome. Oh, thank you. It's amazing. And I was going to say, and then I was like, we have to write everything down because I'll just forget what I'm going to say. But it's really amazing. And we're always around. We're going to be doing this podcast for the unforeseeable future forever. We just finished recording all of Eclipse and Britanner. We just started Midnight Sun. After Midnight Sun, we're going to go and do all of Breaking Dawn, and then we're planning on doing a good
place to skip to. I approve of that.
Yes, I feel good about it now. And then we're going to start over because we want to do completed Midnight Sun with Twilight before we did the short 12 chapters of Midnight Sun with Twilight, and then we had a funeral when Midnight Sun was done. So we're glad to be able to revive it and bring it and do the entire books together.
Yeah, the way they're supposed to go.
So we'll be here still if you ever.
Well, thank you so much, and good luck with all of your plans.
Thank you, Stephenie.
Thank you so much, Stephenie.
We love you.
We do. Oh, thank you so much. Okay. And I'll see you guys later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.